The night everything started falling apart, both my marriage and the actual roof over our heads. I was standing on a ladder, holding a flashlight with my mouth because my hands were shaking too much to use them properly. Rain was blowing sideways through a hole the size of a basketball. Thunder was rattling the gutters, and my wife, Mara, was downstairs yelling at me because I didn't patch it earlier like a real adult. Yeah, that's how my story begins. Not romantic, not tragic. Just me, Wendell. The universe cursed me with that name, soaked like a forgotten sponge, trying to keep mold from taking over our attic while my wife defended another man's opinion of me. See, the only reason I was on that ladder at all was because he said I couldn't fix it. He as in Rowan, my wife's coworker, the man who somehow managed to turn every minor inconvenience in our lives into a referendum on my competence. Earlier that day, Mara came home and casually said, "Rowan told me that roof leaks don't get fixed right unless you hire a professional. He said DIY repairs are for people who don't value their homes." She said it with this smug little shrug, like quoting Rowan was the same as quoting NASA. And look, I know I'm not some master craftsman. I fix clocks, not houses. But the leak wasn't that bad. And honestly, I would have hired someone if she hadn't thrown his name into the conversation like it was a challenge. So there I was at 9:26 p.m., water slapping me in the face, Mara standing at the foot of the ladder with a towel she wasn't even offering, saying, "Rowan said this storm would make it worse. He literally predicted this, Wendell." She kept saying Rowan said, over and over, like Rowan was Moses and the roof was a biblical prophecy. I wanted to scream, "Why does Rowan get more trust than your own husband?" But since I'm apparently incapable of emotional volume, what came out instead was, "Could you, MGH, maybe hold the ladder? Please? It's slippery." She didn't. She crossed her arms and said, "If you fall, that's on you." Rowan said, I swear, something snapped inside me at the sound of his name again. I'm not a violent man. The most aggressive thing I've ever done is leave a passive-aggressive Yelp review. But hearing her defend him while I was one misplaced footstep away from death, it made my chest burn. And then the universe decided to add comedy to my tragedy. Lightning cracked so loud it felt like someone slapped the sky. I flinched. The ladder wobbled. The soaked plank under my foot gave out like a wet paper plate, and I plunged straight through the attic floor, crashing into the hallway closet, onto Mara's seasonal throw pillows. As I groaned on the floor, covered in insulation glitter and humiliation, Mara didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't check if I broke anything. She didn't even gasp. She said, and I quote, "Rowan told me this would happen." That was the moment. The moment something in my brain clicked so loudly I swear I heard it. Because she didn't say, "I told you this would happen." No, she credited him. My rib was throbbing. My knee felt like an overloaded hinge. My pride was basically soup. And still, all I could think about was how she looked more disappointed for Rowan than worried about me. I tried to get up, but my leg buckled, and she sighed like I was inconveniencing her by existing incorrectly. She muttered, "Rowan would never try to fix a roof he wasn't trained for." And that's when I said it. The first part of the sentence that would grow into the 11 words that ended everything. When I finally managed to pull myself out of the pile of Mara's decorative pillows she cared about more than anything I could build with my own hands, I felt every bone in my body protesting. My knee was screaming, my elbow buzzing, and my pride was somewhere under the drywall dust. Mara didn't react. Not even a flinch. She just stood there with her arms crossed, staring down at me the way someone stares at a spilled drink they don't feel like cleaning. I tried standing up again, leaning on the wall this time so I wouldn't collapse like a dying accordion. "Mara," I said, "do you honestly not care that I just fell through the ceiling?" She shrugged. Actually shrugged. "I told you Rowan said it was a bad idea." There it was again. His name. Spoken like a verdict. Spoken like gospel. Spoken like the scoreboard of our marriage. And Rowan was already winning by 100. Something broke inside me right then. Maybe a rib, but also something deeper, something emotional, fragile, the part of me that still believed she and I were on the same team. I asked her, quieter this time, "Why do you keep taking his side? Why does he get more of your trust than I do?" My voice cracked halfway through, which made her roll her eyes. I hate that my voice cracks when I'm upset. It makes every argument feel like puberty came back just to humiliate me. She said, "Because he's usually right, Wendell. He thinks things through. You jump into them." Jump into things. I repeated. Like trying to fix our home? Like trying to help? That's not help. That's reckless. And Rowan even said. And that was it. That was the spark. The pressure point. The one nerve she'd touched too many times. Not the roof. Not the fall. Not even the root beer incident from before. It was the way she kept saying his name like I was the side character in my own marriage. So I said the 11 words. I didn't plan them. I didn't rehearse them. They just came out in one shaky breath, raw and trembling and louder than I meant. If Rowan is always right, maybe he should be your husband. Silence. Actual silence. The storm outside was pounding, the wind rattling the broken ceiling, but between us? Dead quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring because the tension is too thick to breathe through. Mara didn't blink at first. She just stared at me, stunned, like she finally noticed the person she'd been talking down to for months actually existed. Then her face changed, hardened, like she put on a mask that fit her better than the softness she used to show me. You didn't mean that, she said slowly, but it sounded more like a warning than a question. I think I did, I whispered, even though my voice shook and my eyes burned. I think you trust him more than you trust me. And I think you'd rather listen to his opinions than hear my feelings. That's ridiculous, she snapped. Is it? Because the roof fell, I fell, and your first reaction was to quote him. Not check on me. Not care. She folded her arms tighter, and I swear she looked offended by the idea that she should have cared. You made the choice to fix it. I wasn't going to baby you. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. So that's your point now? That I deserved it because Rowan said so? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence was louder than any argument she could have thrown at me. I staggered to my feet, dusty, hurting, pathetic, and all she did was take a step back so I wouldn't bump into her. She used to rush toward me when I stubbed my toe. Now she treated me like debris falling from the ceiling. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold. If you really think I should be with Rowan, maybe you need to rethink what this marriage even is. And that sentence, that one sentence, hit harder than the floor I'd just fallen through. Because for the first time, I realized she wasn't defending Rowan anymore. She was considering him. And me? I was just the man dripping rainwater in the hallway, trying to hold together a house and a marriage that were both rotting in places I couldn't reach. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't yell. She just said it so quietly, so plainly, that it felt colder than if she'd screamed it in my face. Rowan wouldn't fall through the roof. I just stood there, blinking. I was still covered in wet insulation, one sock missing, smelling like mildew and cheap attic wood, and she said that. Not, are you okay? Not, let me help you up. Just that. That's when something inside me stopped trying. It's hard to explain, but it felt like a thread in me snapped. Not a dramatic explosion, just a snap. Like a stitch popped open in a jacket, and the cold started seeping in. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even humiliated. I just gave up. I didn't say anything. I went to the bathroom, rinsed off my hands, sat on the edge of the tub, and looked at the scratches on my knee. It looked like a child had scribbled across it with a rusty crayon. I sat there for 20 minutes. She didn't check on me. Eventually, I limped downstairs. She was on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders, watching some design show where perfect couples renovate perfect homes and laugh in slow motion. My fall was already old news. I said, softly, I'll call someone tomorrow to fix the ceiling. She didn't look up, just nodded. Good. That night, we lay in bed without touching. The space between us felt like a canyon. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, the part that hadn't collapsed, and wondered if maybe that was the only honest part of this house. The only one that finally gave up pretending. At 3:14 a.m., her phone buzzed. She didn't see me look. I wasn't even trying to spy. I just saw it light up from the nightstand. Rowan Barley. A message preview. Just 6 words. Let me know if you're okay. She smiled. She didn't reply right away. She just smiled at the screen. That smile? That was the part that finally hurt. Not the fall. Not the mess. Not even the 11 words I said. It was knowing I could almost die in front of her, and she'd frown. But he texts 6 words at 3 a.m., and she smiles like a teenager in love. The worst part? I still didn't want to believe it. I still told myself maybe she was just being friendly, that she was just lonely at work, that Rowan was one of those flirty people who didn't mean anything by it. But deep down, I knew. I knew we had already left marriage and entered cohabitation with emotional divorce. What I didn't know, what hit me just days later, was how far she was willing to take it, and how publicly she'd do it. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence that wasn't technically silence, just full of useless, dead conversations. We talked about trash pickup, mail, groceries, the hole in the ceiling that still hadn't been fixed. She mentioned hiring someone named Eric that Rowan recommended. I nodded like I cared. I didn't. But something else happened on the third day. I came home from work a little early. I told her I had a meeting downtown, but it got canceled, and I figured maybe, just maybe, if I surprised her with dinner or showed up early, we could pretend to be a couple again. Maybe I could reset whatever nightmare we'd been sleepwalking through. I walked in through the back door quietly. I do that sometimes. It's a habit from when I used to surprise her with flowers. Only this time, I didn't hear silence. I heard music. Jazz, I think. Some pretentious instrumental saxophone garbage that Rowan probably introduced her to. I followed the sound. It led me to the living room, and what I saw made my stomach turn in a way I didn't think possible anymore. She was sitting on the couch in her robe, sipping wine, with a manila envelope in her lap. Her phone was on speaker. His voice, Rowan's voice, was clear as day. "I put everything in the envelope," he said. "Let me know if you want me to send the rest." She laughed. Not just a chuckle. A girlish, sweet laugh. One I hadn't heard since our second year of marriage. "I'll check it out after I shower," she replied. I stepped forward. She looked up, and her whole body stiffened like I'd walked in holding a gun. Her face dropped so fast it looked painful. She fumbled to hang up the call, practically throwing her phone onto the couch. I didn't yell. I just asked, "What's in the envelope?" She tried to act normal, casually folding the flap closed. "It's nothing. Just some mock-ups. Rowan's helping me pitch a freelance project." Mock-ups. I reached for it. She snatched it away like a child hiding candy. I said, "It's private, Wendell." That did it. I said, "Private? Since when do you and Rowan pass private envelopes to each other at work and giggle over speakerphone with jazz playing?" Her tone switched. "You're overreacting again." "No, Mara. You just don't like being caught off guard." We stood there, frozen, the envelope still in her hands. The storm from a few nights ago had passed, but this one felt worse. I didn't try to take it again. I just looked her in the eyes and asked, "Have you crossed the line?" She blinked like I'd slapped her. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean." She paused, and then, her silence answered louder than any confession could, because she didn't deny it. Not even for show. Not even to protect me, the man who fell through the roof for her. She just turned away and muttered, "You should have called before coming home." That line, it sliced clean through what was left of my hope, because she wasn't even hiding the implication anymore. I left the house without another word. No car keys. No wallet. I just walked down the street like a zombie with drywall dust still clinging to the cuffs of my pants. I walked to the end of the block, sat on the bench outside our old pizza place, and stared at my hands. The same hands that used to hold hers. The same ones that used to build things for her. Now they just sat in my lap, empty, like they were waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. But the next day, I came back early again. And this time, I opened the envelope. The next morning, she left for work early. Earlier than usual. She said she had to prep a client deck with Rowan, and I pretended to believe her. Pretended I hadn't heard the way she laughed with him through the phone, or how she protected that envelope like it held nuclear codes. As soon as she pulled out of the driveway, I walked straight to the living room. The couch cushion she'd been sitting on still had a fold in it. That ridiculous jazz playlist had stopped, but it felt like the air hadn't moved since last night. My hands were shaking, but not because I thought I'd find something. Deep down, I already knew I would. I was shaking because I didn't want it to be real. The envelope was still tucked behind the throw pillow, almost exactly where she left it. Like she thought hiding it poorly would make it invisible. Like she didn't think I'd dare touch something labeled private. But I did. I opened it slowly, carefully, like it might explode. Inside were 8 glossy photo prints. 8. One by one, I slid them out. I remember the order. I'll never forget it. The first was a professional black and white headshot of her. Smiling. Confident. Flawless. The kind she'd never taken with me. The kind I didn't know existed. The second was of her and Rowan at an art gallery, dressed like a couple, standing close. His hand was definitely not in the friend zone. The third, this one hurt the most, was a picture of her wearing the necklace I got her for our 5th anniversary, the one she said she lost. But she was wearing it in his car, smiling like a woman who'd never been married. The rest were part of a brand pitch. A lifestyle campaign titled Reclaim You. It had mood boards, fake Instagram captions, location scouting notes. Her name was listed as the face of the brand. Rowan's name? Executive Creative Director. I just sat there holding it all in my lap, like it was a bundle of dynamite with my initials carved into it. She wasn't cheating on impulse. This wasn't some one-night mistake, or an affair born of boredom. This was structured, intentional, branded. She had built an entire fantasy life outside of me, and Rowan wasn't just part of it. He was the co-architect. What shattered me most wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was the thought that she and I used to build things together. We used to stay up late sketching business ideas on napkins. We used to plan weekend getaways and dream about opening a small shop near the coast. But now she was out there creating something new, without me, and hiding it behind throw pillows like it wasn't dangerous. And yet, after everything, I still didn't confront her that night. I didn't bring it up at dinner, which was just takeout noodles and 30 minutes of silence. I didn't ask about the necklace, or the gallery, or the smile she gave him that I hadn't seen in years. Instead, I watched her across the table and thought about the man she was becoming for. A man who, apparently, never falls through ceilings. And that's when the idea began forming. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want justice. I just wanted her to see what it feels like to be invisible, and I figured out exactly how to do it. It started small. I didn't announce my plan. I didn't yell or throw her things out or stage some dramatic confrontation in the driveway. That's not me. I'm not the guy who slams doors. I'm the guy who gets shut out of them. So I started disappearing. Quietly. That Friday, I didn't send my usual good morning text. I didn't make her coffee. I didn't ask about her meetings. I barely spoke during dinner. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. Either way, she never asked what was wrong. That weekend, I rearranged my schedule. Started working out of the house more. Took longer walks with no explanation. Didn't tell her where I was going. I even left my phone behind, just to make her wonder, except she didn't. Not a single question. And the envelope? I didn't put it back. I didn't shred it either. I tucked it into a folder marked Utilities in the home office filing cabinet, in plain sight. I wanted to see if she'd go looking for it. She never did. That's when I realized something bone deep. I'd already been erased from her life. I was just catching up to it. So I leaned in. I stopped asking her what time she'd be home. I didn't ask who she was texting. I stopped watching her eat dinner, waiting for her to notice how quiet I'd become. I started acting like a roommate who forgot to leave. And slowly, something began to shift in her too. At first, she was relieved. I could see it. She smiled more, hummed around the kitchen, played music out loud again. Jazz, of course. For a minute, it was like my silence gave her permission to fully live the fantasy life she'd been building behind my back. But then the silence lingered. I didn't fight with her anymore. Didn't argue. Didn't comment when she stayed out late. Didn't flinch when Rowan's name came up. I just let it all glide past me like static. And it started to bother her. I saw it in the way her eyes would glance at me during dinner, like she was waiting for me to say something. I caught her looking at my phone screen once, like she suddenly cared if someone else was on the other end. She even asked one night, "Everything okay?" I shrugged. "Yeah, just tired." That was a lie. I wasn't tired. I was watching her squirm. Watching her try to make sense of a version of me that didn't orbit around her anymore. It wasn't revenge. It was education. She had made me feel invisible for so long that I finally decided to become invisible on purpose. And now that she didn't have me to blame, to scold, to laugh at, there was just silence. No one to play against. But the real payoff? That came a week later. She called from the car, pretending it was a check-in. But I heard the real question buried underneath. "Are you going to be home tonight?" I told her no. Said I had plans. She paused. "What kind of plans?" I let the silence stretch. Then I answered. The kind I don't need to explain anymore. Then I hung up. For the first time in months, she was the one staring at the phone. And I wasn't done yet. The final part of my plan. The thing she never saw coming. She still had no idea what I was doing. That's what made it work. The more I withdrew, the more confused she got. I could feel her start to panic, not outwardly, but in the small things. She started trying harder with her makeup. She asked if I wanted to go out for dinner, Even suggested that Italian place she used to say was too boring. She offered to cook. Even called me babe once. It almost made me laugh. That word had disappeared from her mouth months ago, right around the time Rowan started slipping into our vocabulary. But I didn't give in. I nodded. I smiled. I accepted her invitation to dinner. Told her I'd be home at 7 sharp. Let her believe I was playing along again. She dressed up. I saw the effort she put in. Her eyeliner was perfect, her hair curled just slightly, and she wore that green blouse I'd complimented once 2 years ago. It was her version of waving a white flag. She made balsamic chicken, set the table, even lit a stupid candle. Like that would undo the months of emotional decay. I walked in at 7:03 p.m. carrying 2 things, a neutral expression and a small, neatly folded piece of paper. She smiled like she hadn't been ignoring me for months. Perfect timing. Food's hot. I sat down across from her. Didn't touch the plate. She poured wine. I was thinking we could. I slid the folded paper across the table. She paused mid-sentence. What's this? I said nothing. She opened it. Her eyes scanned the top line, and the color started to drain from her face. It wasn't divorce papers. No, I wasn't that impulsive. It was a dinner reservation at a new high-end restaurant that had just opened across town. Private dining room. Expensive. Booked 3 months in advance. The kind of place Rowan had raved about during one of his smug Instagram rants. Her name was on the reservation, next to mine, but the guest list had a red line through her name, and another name handwritten beside it. One she knew, Allie, her coworker, her friend, the one she always called too sweet for her own good, the one who never took sides. Until now. Mara looked up at me, eyes wide. What is this? I finally took a sip of the wine she poured. It's a dinner. With someone who actually wanted to know how I've been. She blinked. You're joking. I shrugged. I told you I had plans. Her jaw tightened. Are you trying to make me jealous? Is that what this is? No, I said. I'm trying to remember what it feels like to be seen. She sat back, stunned. And then I stood up, slowly, calmly, and buttoned my jacket. Enjoy the chicken, I said. And I walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. Because the next part, what happened after she realized I meant it, was louder than any words I could have spoken. I didn't even like wine. But that night, sitting across from Allie in the quiet of that private dining room, I drank every drop. Not because of the taste, but because of the silence. The good kind. The kind where someone actually listens. Allie didn't flirt. She didn't lean across the table or act like she'd been waiting for me all this time. She just asked questions. Real ones. She asked how long I'd been feeling invisible. Asked when Mara stopped looking at me like a partner and started treating me like a burden. Asked how long I'd been walking around with that kind of ache in my chest. And I talked. Not performatively. Not to make a point. I just let it out. I told her everything. The envelope. The fall through the ceiling. The texts. The silence. The 11 words I said that cracked something I was too scared to admit had been dying anyway. Allie didn't judge. She just nodded slowly and said, I always wondered how you were really doing. She never mentioned you much. That stung more than I thought it would. After dinner, she gave me a long, quiet hug in the parking lot. Not romantic. Just solid. And when she pulled away, she said, You deserve someone who doesn't need to be reminded how lucky they are. That line played in my head the whole drive home. When I walked through the front door, I didn't expect fireworks. But I didn't expect what I saw either. Mara was on the floor. Not collapsed. Not crying. Just sitting there in front of the living room couch, knees pulled up to her chest, a glass of untouched wine next to her. She looked up at me like I was a ghost. I didn't think you'd really go, she said. I did. She nodded. You took Allie? Yes. Silence stretched. I read the envelope again, she said after a while. It looks different now. Like I don't recognize myself in it. I didn't say anything. She stood up slowly, brushing off her knees. I never meant for it to get this far. You never stopped it either, I said. She winced. I know. I started to walk past her, but she reached out and gently touched my arm. Are we done? I paused. Then I said, We're not anything right now. And maybe that's better than pretending. She nodded again. And for the first time in forever, she didn't defend herself. She didn't mention Rowan. She didn't make excuses. She just whispered, I'm sorry, Wendell. I really am. And for the first time, I believed her. That night, I slept in the guest room. But the next morning, when I came into the kitchen, She was there, making coffee. 2 mugs. Mine had creamer already in it, just the way I used to like it. She didn't say anything, just slid it across the counter and went back to stirring hers. It wasn't a reconciliation. Not yet. But it was real. And that's the thing about broken things. I used to think they needed to be thrown away. But after years of fixing old clocks, I know better. Some of them still tick, even with cracks in the face. Sometimes, the repair starts in the silence. And sometimes, silence is finally enough to be heard.